What's up, RotoViz?
Welcome into the RotoViz Fantasy Football Podcast live stream edition. Dave and I are back with a simpler format tonight, and one that we hope to make clean enough for a podcast episode as well. Those of you that were watching the live stream the other night probably humorously watched as we fumbled our way through simultaneous little board twos on Underdog Fantasy. We ended up totally synchronized on the two drafts. Poor Wi-Fi connection. Couldn't have been uglier. We still had a couple of decent teams, but tonight we're going to keep things simple, Dave. We're going to go old school and just do one draft. One draft, focus all of our effort and energy on it. We're using your very stable Wi-Fi connection for this draft and your account. So I'm excited to get into this, man. Drafting these best ball teams before the draft. It just makes me so excited about the incoming NFL class. And a lot of these guys are going to shoot up the board just like in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now, ADP is going to be so different. And so you have to get those last swings in before everything gets turned on its head. And so I'm really looking forward to this draft, man. I think you've entered us. Do we know what draft slot we have? And if we don't, where are you hoping that we draw?
Well, we don't know yet. Now, for those of you that didn't get to hear this when we recorded or earlier, because we were number 10 in both of those. And I have been in that 10 and 11 spot. I think you and I did 1 and 11 frequently. So I'd really like to land somewhere around like maybe 3 or 4, as I have not had many drafts yet where I've had to navigate out of there, which I think would be kind of interesting. I also think we'll kind of reach a point where some of the makeups of those teams might be a little bit different too. You know, one of the things that we were kind of dealing with earlier on was and it came out, we're at the 1-4. So I'm actually going to go ahead and share.
All right.
Which this will be slightly different. You know, we were having a conversation with some of the other teams we've built about, you know, they went a little bit more running back heavy than we'd experimented or than we normally do. We experimented with some of that. Might be kind of fun to have one where we get to hammer in some of these wide receivers that we've historically liked early on.
All right, Dave, let's go ahead and get zoomed in here and make sure that we've got a fan-friendly view on the board here.
All right, you tell me when you think it.
Yeah, that's better.
That's looking good. That's
we'll be able to
maybe
zoom in on that. Yeah, that's even better.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Okay, yep.
All right. So from the 104, I mean, ADP in the applet there obviously is Jamar Chase. I mean, you're very happy to come away with any of those 3 wide receivers, whatever order they go in. I mean, CMC almost never falls there. So CD, Tyreek Hill, or Jamar Chase. I mean, we're going to get one of those guys. I don't see us taking a swing on Bijan or anybody below there. And then when you come back down a round, in the second round, it's a good spot to go wide receiver in rounds 2 and 3. But sometimes that, I guess it would be the 2-9 where we're going to be selecting from. Sometimes you get a swing at Jonathan Taylor. Sometimes you get a swing at Devon Achane. Sometimes Barkley falls there. And so we'll have an opportunity, Dave, to go with a wide receiver, running back, wide receiver start if we want as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be the wide receiver times 3. So that's going to be pretty fun. It looks like we're on the clock and Chase is there. I don't think we need to overthink it. I'm very happy to take Jamar at the 1-4.
Yeah, absolutely. We will feel good about that. Get one of these teams here started with a nice anchor at wide receiver. We've talked about some of the things that we could see from the Bengals as we move into the 2024 season. It's easy to make a case that Jamar Chase might have as much upside as any other player, you know, in a year where things break correctly for his offense. So we've got the 1 wide receiver locked in. As you mentioned, coming back around, there's going to be some names that are pretty interesting, pretty intriguing to us. Yeah. At this point, Curtis, we've now seen Justin Jefferson go. So we've had McCaffrey go, followed by a number of wide receivers, and then Bijan and Breece Hall following. So, a decent amount of action already here as we move into the 108.
Yeah, it's pretty chalky. Let's start getting our queue loaded up for either scenario. So maybe we'll start by, which backs dropping to that 2-9 would cause us to want to take a running back in the second round. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs and Kyron Williams don't typically make it there. I'd be interested in either one. Is there a case from your perspective against Barkley or Taylor if they fall? Because I love Achane. I'd be very in on him there if he makes it. But Barkley and Taylor, maybe talk about those two guys because they're almost like post-hype backs at this point, but they still have, massive upside. Barkley, because he's in the new offense, it's going to score a lot of touchdowns, and he's the best back that they've had there in the Hurts era. And then Taylor, I don't think that the receiving upside that we had hoped to see when he entered the league is there, but the teams are going to have to pick their poison between he and Richardson to a degree. And we know that Taylor is capable of that league winning upside. So either interest in either of those guys, or is it just a Chan or bust for you?
Well, I do think that there's a case to be made, and maybe the more fun case that you can make is the one for Barkley. Given some of the games that we saw out of DeAndre Swift in Philadelphia last year, you can make a case that you get Saquon in there and, perhaps he can be more dynamic and that offense will allow him to do things we haven't seen from him in recent seasons. That said, though, Curtis, I do feel like I would probably rather go with one of the wide receivers that might be on the board there, or if not, the upside case we can make for Achane continues to be pretty interesting. Because we got a glimpse of what that looked like too. And I understand that, you could say there's still some unknowns with Achane. We didn't get to see the full season, but I think it should become pretty clear to everybody by now. He's become one of our favorites early on.
Oh yeah, for sure. And after seeing those beefy pictures where he's gained like 12 pounds this offseason, kidding me? Now we don't even necessarily have that lower BMI to deal with. Flip back over to the running backs. Achane did just go.
Okay.
Are all of these guys off the board?
They're all gone.
Okay, so we don't even have
Jacobs, Henry, Etienne.
Yeah, there's no debate. We're not going to take one of those guys in the second round. So let's zoom in on some of these receivers. Obviously, Devontae Adams is tops on the board, and he's the clear guy in terms of the target market share. I don't want to get into this Houston mess in the second round or the Chicago mess. So I'm fine just going with Devontae Adams, or if you want to go with a different offense, you could go with Mike Evans. Either one's fine with me. Yeah,
no, I think Adams is the player that we will go there. There's certainly a case to be made for Evans. The interesting thing is, Curtis, I actually found myself almost wanting to go Malik Neighbors.
Well,
without even knowing,
we can do it in round 3. I think we can do it
exactly.
Often you can, and I think this was a really smart point. I was listening to a post-mortem that Sean Siegel and Colm Kelly were doing on one of their own little boards the other day. And Sean brought up the point, it's exciting to draft the rookies in the little board or the big board if you're still slamming that like I am. I got 145 drafts going concurrently right now, Dave. So if you see me just start twitching at some point during this broadcast, it's because I got like 13 picks to make.
Yep.
But it's important not to take the rookies above where they're actually ADP values. And I think the problem in half PPR for me is I just don't really think these early wide receivers are the way to play it. So I do have some Neighbors and I do have some Marvin Harrison Jr., but I find myself way more interested in the rookies that are, I guess less sexy from a general public perspective. I think it's just a much, much, much better way to play it. We don't know what offenses they're landing in yet, or how their skills transfer or translate, I guess, to those systems. Are they going to end up with a horrible quarterback situation? There's a lot of unknowns and unnecessary risks, I guess, with those guys. Maybe a slightly lesser risk with Marvin Harrison Jr., just because we feel pretty confident that he's going to land with Kyler in Arizona. But I think after that, it's like, all right, well, is Neighbors going to go to the Giants, or will the Giants take a Dunze and will Neighbors go to the Bears? Like either way, I'm just not sure I feel great about it. One from the quarterback and then the other from the surrounding wide receivers in that situation. So we're coming up on the 3-4. I see you've got Jalen Waddle highlighted.
Yeah, we don't necessarily. We were going to talk about
I want to go. You know where I'm going to go. You know that I want the big dog here in round 3.
You want Derrick Henry.
And half PPR, I want the big dog. But you can push back if you're not cool with it.
No. We'll go with Derrick Henry here. So we got the 2 wide receivers. We now follow that up with Derrick Henry. And one of the things,
Dave, we might have 40 touchdowns from our first 3 picks there.
Right. So I wanted you to talk about, and I know we've already touched upon it this week, but for those of you listening to the podcast, you may not have heard about it. You are definitely, I don't know if I should say all in on Derrick Henry, but you're feeling really good. Clearly, you think there's a lot of touchdown upside. The question that I'll pose to you here, Curtis, is, are you feeling good enough about Derrick Henry this year that you think you can actually almost go like a hero running back type of approach, but doing it by getting Derrick Henry in round 3?
I'm in half PPR for sure. I mean, Dave, Gus Edwards had 13 rushing touchdowns last year. Gus Edwards, Gus Bus. All right.
Yep.
Like he's been a value guy, whatever. Like, I'm not disparaging him. Like, he's made a good career for himself. I mean, Derrick Henry is an all-time great running back. And he's an all decade, maybe the back of the last decade. If you're not looking at the total skill set, I guess. This is the best situation he's probably ever going to have been in. And yeah, I'm super excited. Like, this is the cheapest he's been. He hasn't shown crazy signs of slowing down. And like, just to compare the 2023 Tennessee Titans to what the Ravens offense is going to be in 2024, like, I just don't think that you can overstate the type of offense transfer that's happening here. I mean, Derrick Henry is going to have an awesome chance at 20 touchdowns this year. That's what I feel. And, so I've got tons of him. It's hard to track my exposure doing so many drafts at one time, Dave. So I'm not going to really know until the 150 close. I'm going to guess I'll have 35% Derrick Henry in the big board. So I'm excited.
I'm going to go so far as that you'll probably end up with more.
I can't wait.
My bet is on 45%.
I'm excited to see it. You know what? This is a great contest. Even though you're doing it in volume, it's still a great contest to go with your conviction plays. Like, it's almost tailored to that, because so many of the rookies don't even have reasonable ADPs early. So you can go conviction there on the rookies. But the rookies that people do know about are being overdrafted, and it's pushing people down. And so, I don't know. I fully expect that by the time, Best Ball Mania comes around on this platform anyway, fast forward to August, I mean, I think Derrick Henry is going to be like a top 18 pick. He's going to rise another half round when people wise up to what's going to go on in Baltimore this year. So, Dave, why don't you click on the board and let's see what's happened here, as we're about 5 picks away from our 4th round selection.
Like this, you mean? This view? Okay. So, in recent picks, so to start off round 4, you had Cooper Kupp, Sam Laporta, Travis Etienne, Patrick Mahomes, Devonta Smith. So we actually accidentally auto-picked our way into Mahomes, and was it like the 7th or 8th round in one of the drafts the other night?
Which was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, 6, 7. So we see him going here in the 4th. He's followed by Devonta Smith, Keenan Allen, and we are going to have to make a decision here soon.
Yeah. So you've got Kelsey highlighted there. I don't mind getting another wide receiver here. Dave, I kind of want to. I think I'd want a receiver. Higgins and go with the Bengals mega stack here. Hopefully people aren't bored watching, but I kind of like the idea of just making this a Bengals mega team. Like, let's just go all in on the AFC North with this squad. That's the way it's shaping up.
Yeah, I'm perfectly cool with that.
There's a lot of concentration of talent there. So I'm cool with T. Higgins.
Yep. So he's locked in. So we got Higgins now. So the obvious thing becomes we got to start to think about.
We got to take George Pickens or Amari Cooper in the next round. So if we're just going to stick with the AFC North, right? I don't particularly care for Zay Flowers on a Derrick Henry team. So yeah, I think Burrow we can start thinking about. It'd be great if he'd make it to round 7. He often does. But let's focus on this round 5 pick first. There's a lot of players in this range that. I think this is a big old flat tier. A guy that we've been targeting a lot of is Jayden Reed. I have tons of exposure to George Pickens and Amari Cooper in this area. Trey McBride looks like a little bit of a value. Those are the guys I'm most comfortable with. If Kelsey were to slide into round 5, it looks like he went there at 410.
Yeah, he just went.
Now that I see it. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, man. Jayden Reed, George Pickens, Amari Cooper. I'm cool with any of those guys. I'm just looking for alphas here. That's what I'm looking for. Alphas that
Sure.
score over 200 half PPR points.
So a player that I don't think we've had a chance to talk about is Christian Kirk. And we don't have to discuss him now, but we might just want to talk a little bit about that Jacksonville receiving situation now that you do not have Calvin Ridley there.
I'd like to after our pick. I've got a ton of Jacksonville. They're a value team this year for sure.
Got it.
So we're one pick away. Are you feeling Reed? It looks like Pickens went.
Yeah, Pickens did go. So it's probably either Cooper, Kirk, Jayden Reed, I think, are the wide receivers you'd be eyeing unless you wanted to make a play here and go Mark Andrews. But with having Derrick Henry, I'm not sure that's what we'd want to do.
Let's take a swing on Reed as a breakout. I like that there. You know, we went with Devontae Adams, kind of an old guard guy to start, and T. Higgins, you know, we just need a healthy year from him. But Reed, I think the exciting thing about taking a player like Reed as your fourth wide receiver is he actually could end up, you know, if things go well for him, Jordan Love continues to ascend and Reed takes that next step, he could actually end up performing as our second best wide receiver behind Jamar Chase on this team. And it really wouldn't surprise me if he just levels up his game a bit more. So, and if he doesn't, I just think it's pretty hard to imagine a scenario where he doesn't pay off in round 5 here for us. Now we've got a great squad here going with 4 wide receivers, kind of do have a hero RB setup going here, Dave. You mentioned that with Henry, and that's kind of where we're at. Christian Kirk is who you wanted to talk about. So let's get into the Jaguars a bit. You know, they lose Ridley. They had some injuries across that wide receiver core last year. Evan Ingram took a step forward, one of the most targeted tight ends in the NFL, if not the most targeted, and you know, hyper productive situation. Travis Etienne looked great. He was a great value pick last year. I think this offense can take another step forward and provide a lot of value. And because it wasn't super concentrated last year, I think these guys are values. Like, I think Travis Etienne is under his ADP is a value. I think Christian Kirk's is a value. Even if the Jaguars select a wide receiver in the first round, I would still expect Kirk to be the wide receiver 1 on the team for the duration of this year. I mean, he's too talented. He has too much chemistry with Trevor Lawrence, and they've had that success there. And then Evan Ingram may be the target leader again in the house anyway. So I would love to, you know, now that we're 4 wide receivers deep, I think putting Evan Ingram in our queue makes a lot of sense. And if Kirk were to fall below ADP and it made sense for us to kind of ignore structure because of the value there, I'd be in.
Yeah, I think that Evan Ingram really did deliver last year for us. He just goes, unfortunately, there's reason to think that you could get the same this year. Now, I do think that it's worth just noting here. Go ahead.
Before we gloss over that, like Evan Ingram was arguably, I mean, he was a little bit short of a league-winning type player last year, but he was a huge value. And then he's still going as like tight end 7 or 8 this year.
Dude, look at this sea of green in the NFL player stat explorer. He's the tight end 1 in 71% of weeks.
Yeah, and he's going as the tight end 7, I think, on Underdog right now. So, I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's one of those ones that doesn't make sense. So, I would like to not reach on Burrow here. Let's take Deontay Johnson. I want to take Deontay Johnson. Can we? Okay.
Yeah. We can.
I'm putting out. So just
all right. So hold on. I gotta say one thing here though, Curtis. The collective teams that we do, I would like for us to have a less than 75% exposure to Deontay Johnson.
It's not going to happen, man. That's not like. I think I know it's half PPR. I get it, but Deontay Johnson is extremely mispriced. I thought that for the last month as I've been drafting, and I'm even more convicted on it now. I'm writing a focus piece on that. It should drop either Saturday or Monday on rotoviz.com. He is set up to just smash in this Panthers offense. I mean, he's literally brought in to take over the role that Adam Thielen looked so good in last year, and he's just at a way different point athletically and age-wise in his career. So, I mean, Dave Canales specifically targeted Deontay Johnson in a trade. This wasn't like they kicked the tires on a bunch of guys. Like, Canales literally went out and said, I want Deontay Johnson. There's a great interview with him talking about how he envisions him impacting the offense. So I'm happy to get him there, and we can focus on other positions here. Did Burrow go?
Burrow just went. So at quarterback,
did Ingram
guys. I'm sorry?
Did Ingram go?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So
then
we're looking at either like
Jordan Love or Ramondre.
Gross. All right.
I
didn't love it, but we went Ramondre. Now, Jordan Love, I mean, I do like and I do feel decent about. However, though, I'm gonna go with the idea here that I think that we can probably make up a decent quarterback group waiting a little bit longer as I start to look at some of the running backs and players that I think could potentially be in for the type of work that Ramondre could. That list is starting to thin out. So though we do have Henry, I felt like we should probably work in another running back here to go alongside this really solid group of wide receivers that we do have.
Read off the five receivers because I'm just going to roster bait to that.
Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, Jayden Reed, and Deontay Johnson.
I mean, that's what you want out of the 1-4. That's exactly what you want out of the 1-4. We've got 4 alphas plus T. Higgins. I mean, that's pretty awesome. I like that. And Dave, we might even, Love might make it around the corner to the next round to us. He took that big step last year, but I think he can take even another step this year as these receivers continue to mature and take a step forward. The thing that I like about Jordan Love so much on Underdog right now is there's just so many ways to backdoor that stack. Like Watson's a value, Dobbs is a value. You can take Wicks. Musgrave is cheap.
Yep.
So we can go deeper on that stack as we need to, and you see them right there. The next 2 guys in the by ADP that are available are 2 of those Packers. It looks like we got Najee Harris would be another volume play at running back that I think he and Warren both are kind of interesting in this range. We don't have a tight end yet. I do like Njoku and Ferguson both. We're going to probably, in this 20-round format, at this point, since we didn't go early, we're probably going to be taking a minimum of 3 and maybe even 4 at that position anyway. It'd be nice to have 1 that was before round 12.
Yep. So I think that really what we're going to be looking at here, these next couple of picks, is just players in comparison to the other players at their position, which of course is always something to think about, but it is real nice to know that we're pretty well covered at wide receiver and our running back situation actually is decent. So we're kind of free now to sprinkle in quarterback and tight end if there's a player available at a point that we really like.
Love when I'm pretty frustrated by that, honestly.
Well, it's going to be okay. We're up next though, Curtis. So the question is, I don't know if Brock Purdy or Caleb Williams, anybody like that really matters to your concerns. And Najee just went. So you're probably looking.
I'd like to go Fergusin and get a piece of the Dallas offense. Yeah, get a piece of the Dallas offense. I don't want to be shut out on Dallas. In the money weeks of a big tournament, you've got to have a slice of the Cowboys.
Yeah, and actually, if you go back and you look at Jake Ferguson last year, and you kind of look at some of the key numbers for him. So he was 10 in PPR per game. He was actually number 2 in Racer. So he did, as far as tight ends go, did a great job at converting air yards into receptions. He was number 6 in expected points per game, Curtis. And what you see on the heels of all of that, very impressive back half of the year. And actually was a tight end 1, 59% of the time, which I think is an easy thing to overlook if you weren't really, could kind of get lost in the shuffle of some big games from CD Lamb.
It's probably even better in half PPR. And then the other thing, what week's not on there? Week 19. What do you do in week 19? 3 touchdowns in the NFL playoffs. So, when it gets dark and crazy, Dak's looking for Jake Ferguson. So if we hadn't gotten him, I was going to suggest maybe Brandon Cooks later. Maybe we can even still do that. I just like having some Cowboys when we don't have to pay for it. You got Dobbs there, less inclined to force it now that we don't have access to Love, but I do like the value. Some of the backs that we could look at in this range, I like Zach Moss, Jonathan Brooks, Trey Benson. If we're trying to find guys that could really stand out, we've already got some access to the Bengals. through our wide receiver room. It looks like you added Jonathan Brooks there. That might be another way that we've come into some access to the Cowboys, Dave, because there's a lot of smoke on that rumor.
Yeah, there certainly is. So we got down to 5 seconds there. I was just looking for what I felt like could be an impact player here, a little bit different than some of the other players on the board. And hey, I mean, that just might be Brooks. Obviously, that could go a couple of different directions. But Zach Moss, we did get on another one of the teams that we did earlier in the week, and you can kind of make an interesting case for Moss, as we talked about. Brian Robinson Jr., I do think will have spots here and there. But in comparison to a player like Brooks, I felt more interested in, going with a little bit of a shot there on Brooks. So let's regroup here quickly, right? We got Derrick Henry, Ramondre Stevenson, Jonathan Brooks, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, Jayden Reed, Deontay Johnson, and Jake Ferguson. So we've yet to take a quarterback. Currently, the top 2 players on the board by ADP are Brock Purdy and Caleb Williams, followed by Jacoby Myers, Tyler Lockett, Tua, Josh Downs, Dallas Goedert, Tyjae Spears, Jared Goff. So that's the range of player that we're into currently in the draft. As far as objectives for the rest of this draft go, Curtis, is there anything that you think we absolutely must do, or do you think we can still be pretty fluid?
I mean, we're kind of past the range of worrying about values. I mean, it's kind of, get access to the offenses and the player profiles that you want. I mean, we're taking swings here. We're in the double-digit rounds. We're pretty balanced coming in to this area of the draft, and we are wide receiver top heavy. So there's less worry about taking this team out to 8, 9, 10 wide receivers. Maybe it's a squad where, because we waited a little bit at that RB2, maybe we end up a little bit more balanced, and this is like a 3-7-7-3 type build. I'll fall into that type of construct. We're going to probably want 3 quarterbacks for sure because we've waited. And I will say I'm not super concerned about stacking a quarterback with our wide receiver room at this point, but we're going to have opportunities to do it, because if you scroll back down to our wide receivers, in particular, seeing Deontay Johnson there, getting Bryce Young as like our QB3 would be pretty appealing. I was talking about Dave Canales earlier. And I think in the last live stream that we did, we talked about him as well. The impact that he had on Geno Smith, the impact that he had on Baker Mayfield. And now he's got, probably the most talented guy out of that group. I do like Gabe Davis. I see hovering there. Let's go Gabe Davis and try to get Trevor Lawrence in the next round. Yep.
That's exactly what I was thinking. And that does seem achievable. Now, we talked about some of the players, and obviously you talked about the Jaguars before.
And there goes Lawrence. That's all right, man. Purdy makes it. He's a huge value at this point. I mean, he's slid 2.5 rounds, ADP, and then of course there he goes. We got to stop saying names here at this point. Where
we do.
we're pissing ourselves here. Who are the top quarterbacks available?
So top quarterbacks. You got my boy Kirk Cousins, followed by Jaden Daniels, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Baker Mayfield, Drake May, Deshaun Watson, Will Levis.
Okay, so
I would like to try to get
naked Kirk,
one of these guys.
Yeah, I'm not feeling naked Kirk there too much. I would rather go naked Daniels, because he might not end up naked. He might end up on one of these.
And he just went.
Yeah. All right. So So it's probably at this point we need some upside swings and some value. So I think Deshaun Watson, I think Drake May. We already talked about Bryce Young, and then if we want to go with one of those veteran guys at the top, I mean I can live with it. I mean those top 4 guys all the way down to Baker, any one of them could score 280 to 300 points. Wouldn't really shock me.
Right. So do you have a preference?
If you want to go Kirk Cousins, that's fine. Let's let you get your homer pick there, and then we'll take the swings on the other guys.
Okay. Well, I mean, so Kirk Cousins isn't going to win us this tournament, right? He's not going to. I don't think this year you're looking at Kirk Cousins even at that late spot winning anybody a tournament, but I do think that there are reasons to think that he should deliver in a way that's going to be commensurate to what we need out of him in this spot. I think we come back around later, then maybe we do take a swing later on a guy like Drake May if he's still around.
Sure. Yeah. We got to get some upside in there, and we need some guys that can run around a little bit. That's why I like the idea of May or Watson as our 2, and then try to get Young as the 3. If we get shut out there by ADP, this might even be a team that needs a little Justin Fields in its life.
I was going to say that. Crazy. That's exactly where I was going.
Cole Kmet is the end of a tier, so I'd be interested in coming back there as our tight end 2. But he's up at the top probably. If you scroll down, we're getting,
there he is. Yep.
Yeah, we're getting into a different area of the draft altogether. There's a lot of running back value around this area. So if we want to come back and get number 4 after Kmet, I think that makes a lot of sense. So fingers and toes are crossed for Kmet to make it. And I don't expect him necessarily to replicate last year's numbers after Keenan Allen's come on board, but he is a player that he has a pretty nice improvement trajectory dating back a couple years now. He's really turning into a nice fantasy player and carving out a solid niche for himself in that Bears offense. And I think that'll continue to a degree, regardless of who the quarterback is or the impact that Allen has on the offense.
Yeah. Can I toss out a question here, right?
Yep.
The Chargers backfield, you got Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins now reuniting.
Blake Corum. Blake Corum, Chargers backfield.
Okay.
Yeah, probably.
He just got selected. So I didn't even get to my question though here. So it sounds like as a result of that, you were investing very little into the outlook for either of these guys, assuming that we're going to see a back going to them in the draft. Of course, Corum makes sense for a ton of reasons.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to run the ball a lot, but I mean, you can't put stock in Dobbins. I mean, I would like to see Dobbins succeed, but I mean, that's a crazy bet at this point.
Unfortunately it is.
So I do like Charbonnet here. New coaching staff in Seattle. They might view Charbonnet and Walker as a little bit closer, treat them as more of a true committee. That's always an option. Jalen Wright's another rookie that could go on day 2. That's pretty dynamic. And Jerome Ford. I mean, Jerome Ford might get shut out by the back half of the year, but he was so good at the second half of the year that I know they signed,
by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Did Kmet go? No. Let's take Kmet. He's available. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's the clear pick. So I'll let you continue talking, and then we can talk more about Kmet after.
Yeah, so the Cleveland offense. I mean, the line. If you read some of the recent work on the site, we've got the great offensive line series that came back again this year for I think it's its 8th year, talking about offensive line continuity and the importance to fantasy projections. And I mean, the Browns they're returning their whole front 5, and Jerome Ford looked awesome last year. He was certainly not the problem as to why the Browns didn't make a deeper run in the playoffs. And so, Chubb's going to take a while to be fully healthy if he even gets to that point. They bring in Foreman as the bigger banger, but I mean, Ford was solid. So, I mean, if we want to go with Ford of those guys rather than taking another rookie behind Brooks, I would be fine with that. Like to have a slice of the Browns offense. They look pretty good.
So here's something kind of nuts about Ford. 47% of his performances were RB2 performances. So it's kind of interesting in that you did get some of those weeks where on a best ball team, he's going to be contributing even when he wasn't really getting the go, as a player that you saw putting up the 20 points that he did do a couple of times in the year. So we are actually on the clock right now. Drake May is getting close to going, also followed by Deshaun Watson. Do we pull the trigger on one of these quarterbacks now?
Let's take, man, I'm fine either way. Let's go May because he's not hurt. And Watson may fall a little bit further. Some people ding him just because of personal opinions on him. So
May,
another round.
May, very, very productive. Played in that UNC offense like Sam Howell, who we saw be very productive. May actually coming in, looking a little bit more impressive. I think scouts a little bit more enthused about him as well. We should see him getting into an offense who's going to have an opportunity to contribute right away. In some of these places that he could end up, maybe he really comes out swinging. And we now have 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 6 wide receivers, 2 tight ends. So I think we're kind of at the point now. We got Bryce Young in the queue as a potential third option at quarterback to
I don't think
stack.
we need to get. I don't think we necessarily need to go Watson. We can keep him in the queue in case he keeps sliding here.
Yep.
Let's look and see what's available at wide receiver. See if any of our favorite rookies are hanging out in this range. So Marvin Mims and Michael Wilson are both a little interesting in terms of guys that. Well, Mims had the great profile and then didn't get to really show it, and then Michael Wilson actually did look good in spots last year. And of course, the Cardinals jettisoned basically all of their wide receivers. So those guys are both kind of interesting. Wilson has that touchdown upside too with his size there, but I don't feel a lot of conviction to have to take either one of them. We do only have 3 running backs. Probably need to go that direction in this round if there's values there. So you've got Jaleel McLaughlin highlighted there. Yeah, honestly, of the guys on the board there, Algier has a lot of value in case Robinson were to go down. I do think he'll get less of the pie when both are healthy this year, but I kind of also like Roschon there. I think we could target him a little later, but you know, I Swift's going to be the leader in the clubhouse, but I think that is going to be kind of a 1A, 1B. And Roschon was pretty productive last year. I think he can take a step forward. They're not going to want to just wear Swift out after that big 3-year deal. So Antonio Gibson, I see you also highlighted there. And, you know, that's a nice hedge on Ramondre. I don't know if I love stacking the two.
Yeah, I kind of wasn't.
I have been taking some Gibson on the idea that, you know, he might just, maybe he actually comes in and just like outplays Ramondre in camp. I mean, that, you know, they're both big, strong, fast guys that can catch the ball a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know if we would actually go Gibson, but I do think it's worth noting that he's a player that I think is kind of interesting at this point. The Roschon possibility that you talked about, I do think that's somewhat intriguing as well.
Kendre Miller doesn't have a lot of standalone value, but you know, Kamara continues to get advanced in age, and you know, Kendre's going below ADP here. If we were to click on his name. Go back to wide receiver one time here, just for a second. So Dontavian Wicks is kind of interesting. It's not a need because our 6 wide receivers are so solid, and there's some rookies that I do like later. What about tight end? You know, tight end 3 is also something that we could consider here since we waited so long. Hunter Henry, I like.
Hunter Henry's kind of interesting.
I'd really like to go that direction there. So. Hunter Henry would only be a couple picks ahead of ADP, and I would feel comfortable potentially stopping at 3 if we wanted to.
Yep.
At this point, so I'll say here I would be between Hunter Henry and Roschon for this pick, and we're up in 1 here.
Yeah, let me take a quick look at the remaining running backs that are out there.
It falls off pretty quickly.
I think Roschon is the way to go here, because we have compelling research that shows that. At this point, doesn't really matter who that third tight end is. Just getting the third tight end in there is going to raise our probability of advancing into later rounds in the playoffs. So we will go ahead later and fill in that third tight end, but it's not as much of a priority, in my opinion, as getting another running back, which now takes us up to how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that was still our RB4. So I guess. One thing that I'd like to do now, Curtis, is if we roll through the rest of the running back listings here, we've talked about Audric Estime, got to get him in the queue. I'm going to read down names just for people listening. You got guys like Ray Davis, Miles Sanders, Zeke Elliott, Will Shipley, Alexander Madison, Damian Pierce, AJ Dillon.
I will say it. So before you even read off any other names here at this point, what I'm looking for here is rookies that have workhorse ability, or running backs in high touchdown upside offenses, even if they're gross. Again, in this format, we're just looking for, you know, a couple touchdowns here and there. So I do like AJ Dillon for those reasons, even though he's a super gross, hold your nose pick. He's so cheap now that, you know, past years he was 7th, 8th round pick. Okay. I think here it makes sense to get Bryce Young. Before, you know, I don't, ADP doesn't, you know, it's a round ahead of ADP, whatever. We're in the 15th round.
Yeah,
ADP is wide. So now we're done at quarterback, and we do have Young and Deontay Johnson stacked there. Bendels is in the house. He's been tuning in here lately. We appreciate it. And he brought up the idea of Deontay Foreman, which actually fits that same archetype that I'm mentioning with AJ Dillon. Just all it takes is, a week or two of hot hand when you're starting, and, you put up 4 or 5 touchdowns, all of a sudden, you're making history in a big best ball tournament. So I think those are the right. And when I think about half PPR too, I get excited about, the touchdowns. And so I think the 4 guys you have in there, Estime, Ali, Dillon, and Foreman, I'm probably dropping Ali down to the bottom of that list personally. And, I think if we're able to add, 2 of those 4 before the end of this draft and end up with 6 running backs, I'm feeling pretty good about it. You've got the wide receiver tab open there. Is that scrolled up to the top right now, Dave?
It is, yeah. So what I was doing was kind of making a sweep here for any players that we could get excited about, maybe players that there's a case to make could have a little bit of upside. Of course, what I'm probably going to end up doing now is dropping in some rookies here.
Yeah.
Which I think is bound to happen. Greg Dortch, we have talked about some, but
we have. I don't want to talk about him in this draft. I hope we don't have to.
Okay.
If you get back up to the top, I like that you added Devontae Walker. Devontae Walker is one of our favorite value rookies for amongst our entire team here at RotoViz this year. He's got a little bit of an issue with the dropsies, but he's a big play machine. And then at the top here, Dave, I kind of like Wan'Dale Robinson when he started looking healthy at the end of the year.
Yep.
That got me a little bit excited about his 2024 outlook. And the Giants are going to invest in the number 1, but they don't have anything approximating, and like it's wide open for number 2. And Robinson is a high volume type, underneath guy at his optimal usage. So I like the idea of going that direction here. Potentially, you've got your boy Dawson Knox in there because
I was waiting to it. Yeah,
you do it every time. It just is what it is. So I'm pretty good with our queue here.
Yeah, me too. And actually, I think
Elijah Mitchell's kind of the same vein of those other backs that we talked about.
I'll put him in there just so that
49ers are always a threat to add, a day 3 back and, Shanahan hot hand type thing. But probably Robinson here, I think. And then we're probably done at wide receiver.
Yeah, I think that I would agree with that. Robinson, you are right. When you start looking through the list of wide receivers right now, I think that there is some separation between what you might be able to get out of him and the rest of those names. And if we added him, I think we would definitely be done at wide receiver.
Dave, we're just checking in on my personal draft situation here.
Okay,
I'm on the clock times 30.
It's so stressful.
It's the worst, man. It's the worst. So I'm going to make two or three picks here. So these situations don't get out of control here. But as we look at our construction, if you scroll back up, I think we are 3, 4, 6, 2.
Yep.
We did not get. Did we not get Hunter Henry? That's what happened there.
Yeah, we did not get Hunter Henry, which I can move with.
I want at least one more tight end. So, you've got Jawan Johnson. You're getting ready to click on there. I think that's fair. The new coaching staff in Seattle might utilize Noah Fant differently. I think that's kind of interesting. So speaking of gross picks, okay,
yep.
super gross. But I think less gross than Dawson Knox at this point because Dawson Knox, we know, is the tight end 2 in Buffalo. Can't even believe I'm going to say this, Dave. It would be around 20 situation, but Zach Ertz. And he's on the wrong side.
Can I click on we cool with me taking Wan'Dale Robinson before we
okay. I think we're in line there.
Okay. Yeah.
So, he's going back, into that Kingsbury situation. And that's clearly like that signing has Kingsbury all over it. And, maybe he's just going to go teach whatever tight end they draft. They're going to draft Jatavian Sanders or something like that. And, let Zach Ertz draw some stuff on the whiteboard for him. But, I tend to think that, he might be helpful here for a half season at some point when he's staying healthy. So Jawan Johnson's probably a more exciting pick. But, at this point in the draft, ADP is kind of out the window. We don't know who we're going to have access to. So you got to have some bailout picks. And if you wanted to go with Sanders or Sinnott instead, that's, if we want to go with a rookie tight end, that's kind of dicey at times, especially if they're not going to be these round one capital guys. But Ja'Tavion Sanders and Ben Sinnott, I think, are both probably easier to get hyped about than Fant or Ertz. So if we want to add some intrigue to the team, grabbing one of those guys.
Sure. Really so we're back on the clock. At running back, you do have A.J. Dillon, Donta Foreman, who I think we got on one of the teams last week. You talked a little bit about A.J. Dillon.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking to you.
I'm fine with that. Or, the other guy that you could add here for the next round, since we're still taking running backs, he had a disappointing 2023, but we have a new regime in town, and the GM invested in this guy, Miles Sanders. Again, we're just looking for value volume down here. The Panthers are an offense that could take a big step forward. I mean, they invested heavily in their guards to protect Bryce Young. Bryce Young is going to take 20 fewer sacks this year, probably at minimum, and he's going to get the ball out quicker. That's what Canales does. And, if that offense starts moving the ball a little bit, whether it's Chuba or whether it's Sanders or whether it's both, I expect the statistical profiles of both those guys to look a little bit better. I mean, anytime you go out and you sign like the two best guards on the free agent market, that's a good thing for your offense generally.
Sure. So, Curtis, we have not talked about this individual all offseason, which is somehow amazing. Your boy, Rashad Penny.
Yeah, go back to Seattle, baby.
Go back to Seattle.
No, we're not going to go there. But I love Penny. I'll always have a soft spot for him. Penny won me a lot of money the year that he was hot in the best ball playoffs, and that felt great because I was super high on him coming out. So it's nice that paid off for me. Didn't pay off in Dynasty per se, like I would have wanted it to, but it did pay off in best ball in a nice way. So if he could go back to Seattle as a hometown favorite, that's cool. But he'll be buried behind Kenny Walker and Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that the days of us being excited about him getting onto our rosters are gone. So as we look at our queue right now, we got Noah Fant, Zach Ertz, Miles Sanders, Donta Foreman, Rasheen Ali, who I'd put on there. You might not be as high on. Ben Sinnott. Anybody? I mean, I think we're really looking at this point. We definitely want to get another tight end on this roster. We think we're good at wide receiver. We're good at quarterbacks. It's really running backs. Okay.
Sinnott and a couple running backs probably. If we could get either Sanders or Foreman and then Sinnott, whoever we get in round 20, I think, we just look and see, regardless of position, who do we think can score some points on this squad? I mean, Foreman is interesting, but at the end of the day, the Browns renegotiated with Chubb. They would like Chubb to be healthy. Right. I think process-wise, I'd rather take Miles Sanders there. But I mean, it's a long way to go till it gets to us in the 18th round, and he's a brand name player, so he may not make it to us. But man, how the mighty have fallen. I mean, last year, A.J. Dillon, Miles Sanders, you're taking that at like round 7, 8, round 6, 7, something like that. And now we're talking, near the end of the draft. I mean, a couple years ago, a couple of these rounds didn't even exist in these underdog competitions. We stopped at round 18. So yeah,
Panthers,
Sanders, yeah.
Panthers 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice move. Took Audric Estime in the 17th round, which we like. So Miles Sanders gone. So now at our queue, all we have left is Foreman and Ali. So
if we want to get another rookie action in there, I mean, we like Will Shipley, we like Ray Davis. I think either one of those guys could go late day 2 or very early day 3. Shipley's got a nice, balanced profile, and Davis, I mean, if nothing else, Ray Davis is so easy to root for. So if he would turn into a nice NFL cover story next year, it'd be fun to have him on one of these tournament teams. But I don't feel desperate at running back. I would like to have a couple guys here. Foreman probably makes the most sense of who's on the board now for us, so maybe we can go that direction. I would probably feel more frustrated to not get Ben Sinnott than any of these running backs, since you have a couple of them there. So if you're cool, Dave, we'll take Sinnott next, and then we'll mix and match running back in the final 2 rounds.
Yes. So for everybody that can't see the screen here, listening on the podcast, fun name to just mention right now at RB63, yet to be selected, Dameon Pierce. Chris, I remember last year the hype surrounding this young back. I don't remember exactly what round he was going in. That's another case of, man, what a difference a year makes.
Yeah, I mean,
So
he was going like people were taking him in like the 4th round and
yeah.
FFPC Fantasy Pros drafts early in the summer. Like they're going nuts over him. It was crazy.
Yep. All right. So we got Sinnott, and we now have our 3 tight ends being Ferguson, Kmet, and the incoming rookie. At quarterback, again, we have Kirk Cousins, Drake May, Bryce Young. Running back, Derrick Henry, Ramondre Stevenson, Jonathan Brooks, Roshan Johnson, and A.J. Dillon. Sick group of wide receivers with Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, Jayden Reed, Deontay Johnson, Gabe Davis, Wandale Robinson. I don't really feel like there are any glaring gaps in that roster right there.
No, man. It's a good team. It's a good team.
It is a good team.
I'm not like excited about the quarterbacks. I'm just not. But Drake May gives it a lot. I mean, any of these guys could actually end up being a QB1, and it wouldn't really surprise me. And like, I mean, Kirk Cousins could. I mean, if his Achilles was just such a different type of injury than Aaron Rodgers's was, and you know, if he looks good with the cast that he's going to have around him, I mean, I don't think it would be like a shock for him to do anything less than what he's been doing with the Vikings for the past couple of years, like 37 TDs and 4,500 passing yards, whatever. Yeah. So Foreman went, I think, right?
Nope, Foreman's still available.
Yeah,
so
let's take Foreman. Let's take Foreman.
Yep. Wow, and that worked out because we got to wait a while after he'd entered the conversation to take him. So we now have a construction at 3-6-7-3.
And what I say back in like round 5, right? When I said in round 5, I said, it feels like a team that might end up 3-7-7-3. That kind of, I think that's where we're going here. I mean, just got the muscle memory at this point, and when Burrow didn't fall to us, that kind of, that kind of set the wheels in motion here. Are there any other? Just so we're not like hell-bent on taking a running back here, are there any other players that you're just like, man, I'd just like to have this player on this team? It's the 20th round.
Bo Nix, maybe.
QB times 4. I mean, I'm not against it.
I don't know if I'd actually do it because I don't think it really boosts.
Let's put him in the queue so we can stare at it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And then, I don't. Yep.
Let's look at the wide receivers again, just because, man, like Malik Washington, if he ends up returning kicks for people. We could go Jonathan Mingo and stack out that Panthers team a little bit more.
That's actually kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's options. We don't have to have stay, locked in on one of these like round 7 / UDFA type running back types.
We're not going to do it, but just for fun, I put Alan Lazard.
Dave clicked on Alan Lazard, who's a podcast favorite over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no more tight ends that really are appealing to me after getting sent out there. Waller's going to retire, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's too bad. All right. Other guys, like you got Dulcich, Davis Allen, Jelani Woods, Donald Parham, Colby Parkinson, Gerald Everett, who is another favorite of mine. Will Dissly, who
we've gotten to the point of the draft where Dave is just reading names and entertaining himself. That's great.
Yeah. Well, like, does anybody remember there was a couple of Will Dissly had a stretch where like if he played, he put up like 30 points. Yeah. The problem was just he only played every 16 games.
Yeah, he was Mr. Glass. But that was pretty funny. Just sitting here thinking about it. From a correlation perspective, I don't know. I kind of want to take Mingo. Like, we took this team thinking, hey, maybe Bryce Young takes a step forward. If he does and he starts carrying this team, I mean, and I think we talked about this last week, or maybe it was earlier this week. Mingo with the 43-418 line. If he had 4 touchdowns with that, like everyone's going to be like, all right, whatever. Whatever. The team stunk. And he'd probably be going 6 rounds earlier, but having the 0 touchdowns and another guy that we have on this team that did that one time with Deontay Johnson, it's damaging, especially in half PPR, because it makes you essentially worthless. So he's obviously going to snap back, and if he gets 85 targets again, and it will probably be more in 2024. But even if it were only 85 targets, I would expect him to catch a higher percentage of those, and probably score a touchdown on something like 8% of them. So he's gonna score 100 plus half PPR points in that scenario.
Yeah, I do like the Mingo pick here, and I think that that's kind of a pick at this point that kind of differentiates this particular roster in a way that makes sense than some of the other ones that we might have as we continue to build out our portfolio across the year. The other thing that we've talked about too, Curtis, sometimes is when you're working through these best ball drafts, especially in tournaments, you need to go about them like the decisions that the picks that you're making are right. And if Bryce Young is right, that's why we're going to go after Mingo in this spot on top of everything that you just said. So we're 4 picks away here. We are going to end with a 3-7-7-3 construction. After we get that final pick in, Curtis, we'll start to take a look at some of the other teams.
We're going to be 3-6-8-3.
Oh, sorry, 3-6-8-3. That's right.
Yep.
That's right. So we'll break down some of these other teams. I think as far as we're feeling about now, of course, many of these drafts that we do, we end up feeling kind of excited at the end of them. This team, though, we have not done a construction like this, particularly with the waiting on the quarterbacks, not getting one of the interesting earlier tight ends, really loading up on wide receivers. I think this might be the first build like this that we've had this year. I'm going to lock in Mingo, and our 20 picks are made.
All right. Yeah. Let's go in and look at the board. It's a different for the teams that we've co-drafted. It is a little bit different on the format here. I think if we're getting into this, maybe starting by looking back at our draft and what we could have done differently, looking at the squads around us. If I could have a pick back, I know you just weren't feeling it, and it's fine that we didn't do it. It almost worked out because he almost made it back to us. If I could go back, I would have been more forceful on Jordan Love in round 7. I would have liked to have had that stack with Jayden Reed. And I don't think Love's done, man. I think the Packers have really built that team well. And, he's as good a bet as anybody. If there's going to be a quarterback that throws for 40 touchdowns, that's not going to be Allen, that's not going to be Mahomes, it's like, to me, it's like Burrow, Dak, Jordan Love. Like it'd be one of those guys. And so, because I think if we had gone with him there, then we could have come back in round 8 and taken somebody like Javonte Williams or Jalen Warren were still available. And then we still end up with Brooksy in round 9. And the team's really just not like, I don't think the trade-off from Ramondre to Javonte in round 7 to 8, if we had ended up going that direction, and actually Najee only missed us by a pick there as well. That construction isn't materially different. Whereas, waiting for Kirk Cousins to be our 1. But that being said, we talked about the upside cases for those QBs. So I think the team ended up nice, but I like Love.
I'll say this:
a top 10 round quarterback.
I do too, and I will say this: if we're doing 100 drafts, I'm probably going to go in the direction of Love in that spot more often than I'm going to go Ramondre by a decent margin. One thing that did factor into that is the fact that I have also been doing some of these drafts, not quite as many of you would have made that move already a number of times. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's kind of interesting too that Ramondre Stevenson now snuck his way onto a couple of our teams. And I think it's kind of because he's at the end of a tier break, which is going to happen. All right. So we've talked about some of the things that we might do differently. As you look, Curtis, kind of at the back half of this draft for us, if you will, any steps that you'd want to get back there, maybe different directions that we would have taken, or are you kind of happy with how this shook out? I think that the Wan'Dale Robinson pick in round 16 was pretty nice. Also think the AJ Dillon pick at 17 could prove to be pretty interesting.
Let's start with your thoughts on that, because I have 3 picks to make in the next 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay, all right. So I will try to filibuster for a while. I also liked the maneuver here of getting Mingo stacked up there with Young, adding in with the play, because I think that we did manage, even though we went some different directions here than we could have earlier, to kind of still get some cohesion into this team. And I think that between Roshan Johnson, AJ Dillon, and Donta Foreman, you can make a case they can kind of make like a skeleton or a Frankenstein, I guess I would say, of maybe a flex player that you could get into the lineup on a given week. As far as with Higgins and Chase, I would have got Burrow, Deontay. Yeah, we wanted to get Burrow. Unfortunately, or wait, was Burrow available that round, Curtis? Yeah, maybe he was.
We took Deontay, and then we were hoping that Burrow would make it back around, and it didn't quite happen. I'm not sure how close was it to happening.
It was pretty close. So
we missed it by 2 picks. Yeah, I mean, he went 2 picks early. I mean, I think it. Again, if you think about like the 100 drafts playing out, he makes it back to us probably 50% of the time there. And the thing is, like, yeah, we're invested in the Bengals there, but either one of those guys or both of them going off, it's still going to help our team. And I think the bailout option there in my mind had been, well, if we miss Burrow, we'll just take Love there in round 7. And we've already talked about that, so we don't have to revisit it.
So the other good thing, though, is the fact that now we took Deontay Johnson there. The next time that Curtis and I are doing one of these teams,
we will not be taking.
He's not going to be an option.
Dave's going to veto it.
Of course. So Deontay Johnson, really, it's really funny. He basically has become the Adam Thielen pick that we did so many times last year on our teams this year. So that's the view of our team. As I start looking at some of these other constructions here, Curtis, it is pretty interesting. This Mr. Nice Watch 10, what he did here, he went Marvin Harrison Jr., Saquon Barkley, then Rome Odunze. So 2 rookie wide receivers in his first 3 picks, which is kind of interesting. Follows that up with Mahomes, Kittle, Evan Ingram, Raheem Mostert, Mike Williams, and Jerry Jeudy. I'm not sure that that's my favorite of these other teams as I start looking across the board here.
I mean, it's whatever. I mean, he reached, like, as you get to the end of the single digit rounds, he reached, badly on Jeudy, and he had to do that because he started with 2 rookie wide receivers, and then he avoided receiver through all the money rounds of the single digit rounds. I mean, following up George Kittle with Evan Ingram, fine if you want to be heavy at tight end to also go heavy at quarterback there, it just really boxes you in. Mm-hmm. And he is so reliant on Raheem Mostert now. I mean, it's interesting to look at. If he had just gone with like DK over Odunze there, I would feel a little bit better about this team. It's just, having both of those rookies hit in a big way. I know it's a tournament, but I think it was too cute for the first 3 rounds.
Yeah. AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, DK Metcalf, Sam Laporta, Christian Kirk, CJ Stroud, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift, Brian Robinson Jr. That is Dr. Doom. That's kind of interesting start out of the 11th spot.
I don't mind that. I mean, that's an interesting 0 RB team. I mean, maybe it falls just a little bit short of qualifying as a true 0 RB team, but that's very similar to an FFPC style best ball tournament build that we were doing a lot last year. Dave, getting the tight end, getting the quarterback, both within the first 7 rounds. I think he actually took Stroud there in the 6th, and if he had waited until the 7th, he would have gotten shut out probably from his top tier of quarterbacks. So he smartly, when you're on the end of the draft on one end or the other, you kind of do have to make some reaches to make it all work. But yeah, I think that guy, he went in with a strategy and he executed it. It's an interesting structure, and it's one that's had a lot of success in big tournaments.
So the other one that I think is kind of fun to talk about here is P. Paulson 101. Goes Bijan Robinson, Devin Achane, Jalen Waddle, Rashee Rice, Amari Cooper, Jordan Addison, David Montgomery. Then he got Jordan Love and Romeo Doubs. He managed to do it, Curtis. But that's a fun start. Yeah, it is. It is really fun start with Robinson and Chan.
Yeah, scroll down to the second half of his draft. Let's see how he finished it up. I mean, that first 10 rounds, made a lot of sense. Did a nice.
Got Luke Musgrave in there as well. Any other?
I like the back half of this draft far less than I liked the first half.
Too.
but I mean, I'll give him like an A- on the first 10 rounds. I mean, I think he did a nice job.
Yeah, me too. So I think that we've hit the teams I was interested in mentioning there. Any parting thoughts from you here before we close off, which was a much more relaxed exercise than when it was when we tried it earlier in the week?
No, it's fun, man. I think this is great. We had, a huge audience again. Thank you guys for the support. I mean, we're doing these live streams because so many of you are tuning in. We're having a lot of fun with it. And you keep coming back. So we're going to keep doing it. Dave, we've got about a week to pound some of these in. So maybe we'll have to do a couple more. It is a 20 max entry on this little board too. So, I think we can do 37 more drafts like this between the two of us.
Between the two of us, yes.
If I don't stroke out from trying to finish my big board with this accelerated clock. So we did, just as a teaser for those of you listening on the podcast, make sure you're checking the site if you liked hearing me talk about Deontay Johnson and that Panthers offense tonight. I bet you didn't think that you were going to hear a lot about the Carolina Panthers when you tuned in, but you did. And I'll expand on that in written form on the website here in the next couple of days. So for those of you that subscribe to rotoviz.com, you will have a chance to check that out. And if you don't subscribe to rotoviz.com, now is a great time to do it if you want to get Dave and I's analysis ahead of the NFL draft. That's all I've got, Dave.
Thank you for listening to the RotoViz Fantasy Football Show. Send us questions at RVFF